This is Jumping In, the short-form series of the Jedburgh podcast. I'm the creator and host, Fran Racioppi. Each week I have the opportunity to speak with transformative leaders, visionaries, drivers of change, those dedicated to winning no matter the challenge. Our long-form series has been an opportunity to go deep, unpack all aspects of our guest and their story. For Jumping In, just like our Jedburgh teams of World War II, I want to get on and off the drop zone fast. I want to catch up with previous guests, give my opinion on what's happening in the world, and uncover some of today's most pressing issues. The entire Jedburgh podcast is sponsored by Jersey Mike Subs. Together, we share the mission of giving back and building community together. A percentage of all proceeds is dedicated to the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. Check out our website for full transcriptions of every episode at jedburghpodcast.com. Follow us on social media at Jedburgh Podcast on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Subscribe to us wherever you listen to your podcasts and watch our full video versions on YouTube. How you prepare today determines success tomorrow.
If I give you $20 and say, hey, go on upstairs to the cafe, here's $20, just pay me later, you can come back and give me $20. It doesn't need to be the same $20 bill that I gave you, because that's a fungible token. Non-fungible means I need to have that exact $20 bill back.
I didn't expect that sitting in the Podfest conference center would teach me something about traffic, until my co-host for the weekend, Juliet Hahn, introduced me to Katie Brinkley.
Katie is the host of multiple podcasts ranging from sports, marketing to NFTs. And Fran was really excited to learn that she used to be the sports and traffic reporter for the local news.
Julia and I had the chance to jump in with Katie and talk about building a podcast, branding, and digital marketing. Plus, Katie tested our knowledge of NFTs, which I totally failed. And I asked the question on all of our minds early every morning. Why is there so much traffic?
Follow the Jedburgh podcast and your next stop on all social media and podcast platforms. Check out the full version of this and all of our Podfest conversations on YouTube.
Katie, welcome to the Jedburgh podcast.
Yay, thank you so much for having me.
Super pumped to meet you this week. And I have to tell you that I am in the presence of a professional, right? Because there's so many, our paths have like somewhat intersected, or at least we have mutual interests.
We do.
Right? You have executed on more of those mutual interests than I have over the course of your life, which I think is amazing. But you were a reporter.
Yes.
For radio, you covered traffic, you covered sports, right? Two of my interests, right? And I would tell you, I bring up traffic and everyone's going to be like, traffic isn't your interest. Like, well, here's what I'm going to tell you. I did not become a journalist when I was so I studied broadcast journalism. That was my major at Boston University. And then I was faced with the decision, do I go to like Bangor, Maine and become a traffic and weather reporter, or do I go in the Army and become a Green Beret? And I chose the later. The latter of those two.
That sounds like you made the right choice for sure.
Right. But I love that story.
Right.
But I'm jealous of what you did. And you spent time at Vail, which is like one of my passions, snowboarding, I ski. So yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes to sit down with Juliet and I. We are making our way around Podfest, and Juliet said we have to get Katie in here and talk to her.
Well, and the thing that's so fun is I've known Katie now from Fireside and your podcast Across the Pond.
Yep.
And so it was really fun when I was walking the exhibitor floor. I was like, wait, there's that hat. I think I'm going to know the face behind that hat.
I think I know that hat. Wait a second. It is.
Yes,
I'll just randomly say Katie, and she turned. Oh my God, there she is.
Right. So, which was so fun to put, just to meet you in person, because I know you're doing some great things on Fireside as well. And then James, your co-host,
yes,
who and I have talked a number of times, and he's just a really great guy. So
he is an awesome guy. I'm so glad to be a part of his circle, because he's got a lot going on, and he's so passionate about sports and just podcasting. So he really should be here, but this whole like COVID thing is still kind of prohibiting a lot of people from crossing borders.
Right, and he's far away. But yes, no, it's so great to meet you. And it was funny when I introduced you to Fran, and then Fran goes, "Wait, we should have Katie." And I was like, "Well, that was my next thing." When she walked away, I was going to say, because I just didn't want to assume. I didn't want to assume, but she is amazing. So welcome.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Well,
yes.
Let's talk about Podfest for a second, and then we want to ask you about your 3 podcasts, because between Juliet and I, like, we have 2. Well, she has several shows that she does, but the stuff you're involved in is like double what we're doing combined. Right. And you have your work in digital marketing and working with people who are trying, like we're doing, to become up-and-coming podcast hosts and get involved in a lot of different things, and branding, and how do we actually get that message out here. And we were fortunate to bring Stu from Pick Cherries in here a few minutes ago and talk to him about what they're doing, and how do we solve one of the biggest challenges that's out there right now from a content creator standpoint of how do we get people to actually share our stuff, right? Yeah. And the portions that work. But why come to Podfest for you?
For me, before the pandemic, as you said with my very, very generous intro, thank you, Fran, for that. But I mean, like, I come from radio. I used to be a broadcaster. And when I left radio, I mean, honestly, I didn't tell anybody that I used to be a broadcaster because I was so embarrassed that I left as early as I did, that I stopped so soon. So, it was my passion. It's what I always wanted to do. Sirius XM came out and I was like, oh, well, that's the end of radio. Guess I better move into marketing. For me, you guys laugh.
Yeah, I did. We have Sirius in every car, and I never listen to the regular radio.
And so I was like,
I listen to the radio. I don't do Sirius.
But think of, for sports though, which is what I did. Yes. I did sports and traffic. It's still very localized. Yeah. I don't know why I gave up as soon as I did, but moving on to why Podfest, I wanted to get back into radio for so long because I love audio. I mean, like, as a kid growing up, I'm an only child. I would sit in my room and I'd do radio shows. I'd do the commercials. I would do everything. I'd play music. And I still have some of the cassette tapes of my radio shows. I should try and
that was when we had tapes too.
Yes, I'd record them. And, but I think that was the thing, is like I always had such a strong passion for it. And I thought, in March of 2020, it was the last conference that I went to before the world shut down. It was at Social Media Marketing World. And I was like, God, everyone here, it seems like, knows how to podcast. How does everyone have a podcast? And so when the world did shut down, I was like, well, I'm at home.
Right.
All these other people had it, and they made it seem like it wasn't that hard. Yeah. Let's just try and figure this thing out. And I ordered a microphone off of Amazon. So you go back and listen to beginning episodes, and you can tell how amazing they are. No. Don't go back and listen to episodes 1, 2, and 3. But that was the thing, is I wanted to get into it. And once I started, the whole world opened up for me. I was meeting new people, for guests that were coming on my show. And then, I found another show to be a part of, which was Across the Pond. And James and I, he lives in Scotland.
Right,
and he's one of my closest friends. And we get together and talk on a regular basis. And again, meeting more new people. And it opened up this whole new world to me that I never had been exposed to before. Yeah. And so when Podfest came around, there goes Mike Hamm walking down the aisle right now over here, and I was a guest on his show, and I was like, oh, now I get to see him in real life.
Right.
And it's just like seeing a friend, even because I was on their show. And so when Podfest said they were going back in person, I was like, I have to be there because I've met so many amazing people over this past 2 years because of my podcast. I want to see them in real life, and I want to see who else I have the opportunity to meet that also shares this love of podcasting.
Which I love so much, because I know what you just said. When I started my podcast, I actually started before the pandemic, but it was the same thing. I love podcasts. I was on the radio in college, and I love that aspect of it. And it was really like, okay, I want to dive into this. I'm going to figure it out myself. And I did the same thing. I ordered a microphone of that. I actually went into my closet, was not even a walk-in closet, and started recording there because that's what I thought you had to do. Yeah. Right? I'm like, okay, this is the best place, and no one can interrupt me, and I'm going to do all these things. But it's really fun to, as it evolves, and then as you said, the connections that people, that we make with the people that we have either on Fireside or on these different apps, or that you've had on your podcast, because it's like, oh my gosh, it's so nice to meet you in person and truly connect.
Yeah, and I mean, when we met, when you and I ran into each other in the exhibitor hall, it was like, you're like, Katie Brinkley, Juliet, and I was like, oh my God, hi, and we immediately hugged.
Right, we did,
because we'd had the opportunity to hear each other speak, and that's what's so cool about podcasting, is it's unlike any other type of social media where you're seeing these beautifully curated, staged photos, these dancing 10-second videos. Right. there's something authentic by hearing someone speak, and it moves
Yes.
relationships along at lightning speed. So
it really, and I think that touching on the voice, it really, really does, because when you hear someone's voice, you can kind of, it's like a window into their soul, really. You can tell when they get excited. You can tell when they're, if they're nervous or stressed. I mean, you really can with someone's voice. So I love that you said that.
And the barrier to entry is low, which you talked about. I mean, you talked about going in your closet. I mean, you talked about doing it as a kid. I mean, and there's people here, I've talked to them in the last couple of days, who, they're like, well, I record on my iPhone and I, talking to the bottom of it so it drowns out the background noise. And you have that all the way up to multi-million-dollar productions.
Yes.
And it's everything in between, and you just got to figure out what, where do you want to be along that spectrum? Where can you be, and what's going to be that path? Talk about your 3 podcasts.
Okay, well, before I do, I want to just say something on that because it was such a good point, Fran. That's one of the things about Podfest is there's people here that are started by talking into their iPhone using voice memos and then just uploaded it. There's people there that are at that phase, and there are people here that have like these huge, setups and are getting millions of downloads. But you know what? There's no judgment.
Right.
It's everyone's here to help lift each other up and like, oh, you're a podcast too? Like, what is that? I'd love to listen to it. And it's such an awesome community with podcasters because there's no competition. All of us just want to help elevate one another. It's so cool.
Right. It's a community. And community is a huge part of what we talk about all the time on the Jedburgh podcast, on Your Next Stop. I mean, that's what brought Juliet and I together was about how do we build communities around anything that we're doing. I mean, we're in the middle right now as we record, but when this comes out, it will be past a 12 episode set that we did on fitness from the Go Ruck games down in Jacksonville, where it was the fitness community coming together. And that's another area much like this where people are coming in and they're saying, how can I help?
Yes.
And I love
that. And they're not looking and going, I want what that person has. It's how can I help you to pursue your dream, which I think at the root and foundation of everybody who walks these floors, as you said, this was your passion.
Yeah.
You have to be passionate about podcasting.
For sure. Well, and I think the two, like Juliet, she has the YNS NFL show. I have the NFL show too. But I don't feel like we're in competition at all.
No, totally.
Because while they're both NFL, they're both slightly different. And like, well, how can we help each other? Like, you come on my show, like I'll come and listen to yours. And it's such a community within the podcasting space. So I just love it. But yeah, sorry to, that's why I had to be at Podfest.
No, but it really is true. And I think that is, it's such a point, is that we all started our podcast because of a passion, right? We either wanted to get our voices out to help other people or connect with other people. And so being here and seeing other people like, hey, I have a question. I mean, the setup that Fran has is, and how he did this, it's so impressive. But it also was something that it was he's like, I want to start doing these live things. I'm just going to jump into it. I'm going to learn how to do it. I mean, he taught himself how to do all of this.
No, it's
very impressive. Very
impressive.
Very impressive.
I only have one show though, so 3 shows.
3 shows, yeah. So as you can tell, I kind of have lost my voice a little bit. It's because I have 3 shows and I've been talking for the past 3 days. But so I have Rocky Mountain Marketing, which is my marketing podcast. It's the one that I started first when I ordered that microphone off of Amazon. And then now I started the Across the Pond NFL podcast, which has turned into an entire sports network. I only co-host on the NFL section, which is running, it runs 2 times a week during the season and then just once a month in the off season.
Okay.
And then my newest podcast, which is a daily podcast, is the NFT Ninjas. And it's 15-minute episodes just kind of to help people along there. What the heck, this whole NFT, Web3, blockchain.
Okay, well, I'm going to put you on the spot right now because
I
do not understand NFTs and Web3. So break it down for me.
Okay, so I think that this is why. So this is the only reason why I even paid attention. So when Mark Zuckerberg, that little stinker, changed the name of Facebook to Meta, I was like, God dang it! I'm gonna have to go and learn this whole Web3 business because my day job is social media.
Right.
I help businesses with their social media to get more awareness, and so I'm like, if he's changing the name of Facebook to Meta, it means that this whole metaverse, this whole Web3 thing, if the guys with all the money in tech, if they're paying attention to this stuff, that means I have to pay attention.
Right.
And so I started learning more about Web3, metaverse, NFTs. I bought my first NFT, and then that was the hardest part, is the entry to getting into it. So NFT stands for non-fungible token. That still doesn't make it any clearer. Right. So
I'm now at this point more confused.
So this is the thing. So like if I give you $20 and say, hey, go on upstairs to the cafe, here's $20, just pay me later. You can come back and give me $20. It doesn't need to be the same $20 bill that I gave you.
Right.
Because that's a fungible token.
Right.
Non-fungible means I need to have that exact $20 bill back. Or is that a piece of art? Hey, here's the Mona Lisa. You can take it and hang it up at home. Just bring it back in a week. Give me it back a week later, you give me a Monet. The Monet is very nice, but it's not the Mona Lisa. They both are still very valuable, but it's not the same piece. So that is a non-fungible token. So that's where these NFTs have come into play, and brands are utilizing them. Starbucks, Gucci, all of these brands are starting to get on board, and they can be used as like a Gucci bag, for example. If you buy a Gucci bag, you might have just bought it off of a vendor in, New York City, like off of the street, or you actually could have gone to the Gucci store and bought it. There's no way of really telling.
Well, it depends. Do you want the real one, or do you want the...
But this is where, like, with Gucci, they're giving out some NFTs with the purchase of your bag. So it actually shows...
So it's attached to the bag?
Yeah, so it shows on the blockchain, which is a peer-to-peer network.
The second thing I don't understand.
Yeah, it's, you should listen to the podcast.
I'm going to have to start.
But I mean, like, it's this whole second level of, like, proof of ownership. And, like, you can see, like, okay, well, when I bought the bag, I paid $100 for it. And if I want to resell it on eBay, I could sell it maybe for $200, or I could try and sell it for $20. But you can see how much it sold for every time, how many times it's been sold, how many people have owned it. So it's a new way of being completely transparent with all of your purchases and with your community. I mean, most of these communities with NFTs are in Discord, and I'll promise I'll get off the NFT train. But I mean, one of them I have is a meta athlete NFT. And so like Devon Taves from the Colorado Avalanche owns one. Roger Clemens, he's a part of it. And so you're in this community with professional athletes, and all of us are passionate about sports. We're all passionate about mental health. We all like to talk about sports. We all like to talk about the games. But the only way I get access to that community is by owning an NFT.
Right.
And so like I own this little piece of art, which, I have it as my Twitter avatar, but I mean, that's really all it is. But it's giving me access into this like private club, this private membership. And if I get tired of it, I can sell it. And somebody else that wants to have that kind of access to these people can buy it from me. So it's a really unique way of finding your community and of showing proof of ownership.
And it's interesting because I keep saying I don't really understand it, but then I actually have, because I've learned now time and time. This is like the fifth time someone has explained, and you explained it really, really well.
Thanks.
But no, you did. So that is it. The more you hear about it, the more it's going to be like, okay, I get it.
You start to understand it.
The NFT Ninjas, okay, and this is the thing. It's a daily podcast, but they're really short episodes, like 10 to 15 minutes long, because it can get overwhelming.
Right.
And so like we break it down into like, what does this mean? What is a hot wallet? What is a cold wallet? And then you can listen to it again, or you can be like,
I don't know about that.
Yeah, you can be on your way and move along onto the next piece of this whole Web3 business. But
I love that.
We're all new to it. So if you're not too late, it's the perfect time to just start learning, because we are going to be moving into this space sooner than I think we all would have imagined. So
if I get an NFT, what I heard is that I can make contact with Roger Clemens and get him on the podcast. That's pretty much how my mind just works.
Yeah, no, for real, man.
No, you're right. Right?
You can.
Yes.
So I mean, like this morning, the Avalanche are in the playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs, and Devon Taves, who plays for the Avalanche, knows that I'm a huge Avs fan because I'm always in there talking about the games. And I said, I'm so nervous about the game tonight. And this morning he came in and he said, "Are you feeling a little bit more relieved now?"
How
and
cool
so
is
like,
that?
so I mean, like,
awesome.
so it's so cool because
That's
like
very cool.
You have this access to people and you build relationships, and it's that community. I mean, okay, so and then we talked about this too with being here at Podfest, community. And if 2020 taught us anything, it's that you don't need to just be localized to have community. You can find your people online, and you just have to know how to look for them, and you have to be willing to have those conversations and open up the door for opportunity.
Yeah. So 2 questions for you.
Okay.
One at a time, though.
Okay.
And if you listen to my podcast, you'll often know that I ask several questions in a row often, and then expect consolidated answers. But you have the NFL. You have across the pond covering the NFL. NFL season's about to start. You covered sports. You live in Denver, so I have to somehow assume that maybe the Broncos.
Yeah, the Broncos are my team.
Your
That is the correct
I'm
assumption.
Patriots fan, so
You're a who's fan?
A Patriots fan.
Yeah.
I'm from Boston.
Okay,
I know.
it's
It's
fine.
like, oh, as a Giants Eagles fan.
Oh
it's like,
no! That's the worst. Like you're gonna need to leave. She's going behind the backdrop for this conversation. Part of the conversation.
Where's Juliet? She's been summoned to the back.
We've stricken her. Okay, what's your outlook for the Broncos?
I love the fact that we got Russell Wilson. I think he's a great quarterback. I think that we have a really good receiver corps. I think we have a great running back. I think we have a great defense. But we're in a really, really tough AFC West.
Yeah.
I mean, it is really up for anyone, I think. This is where injuries are going to come into play, because that's going to be the biggest deciding factor of who ends up winning the AFC West. Honestly, the fact that Russell Wilson came to us as opposed to the Giants or any other team.
Nobody wants to go to the Giants.
Well, no, but for real,
days.
it's a really tough division, and you're up against Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, and don't write off Derek Carr. He is a very capable quarterback. So and now they got all those weapons at wide receiver. Are you kidding
and
me?
Josh McDaniels went to the Raiders. So.
Well, that's even more reason for me not to like them.
Well, it didn't work out for McDaniels when he was in Denver, but that was the first. That was the first stint, and normally these guys come back and
that was
they
the
do a lot better.
beginning of the end of the Broncos when Josh McDaniels came, and
he was like 32 years old.
Oh God, yeah, and traded away everything, and then made Tebow with our first round pick, and yay. But that's okay, as you can tell.
Tebow's numbers, though, were like, if you look at just the numbers.
Yeah, he was like 9 for
bad.
12, but he did have. He did have
he had,
Jesus
like, the
on
one
his
pass.
side.
He had like that one pass in the playoff game.
Yes, I know,
like
to Demaryius
ridiculous.
Thomas. I know. Yeah, it was against the Steelers. It was. I was there. It was a great game, but yeah, it's yeah. This is the thing. For the Broncos, I think that they're going to be one of the older teams in the AFC West, so they have to kind of judge off of how they've done this past season.
And the injury thing. That's really.
I think that's what's going to be the deciding factor is who from all these teams, what star player, how many star players get hurt.
Yeah,
which is so sad. Do you know what I mean? It's really
I'm
sad.
like which one of you guys are going to get hurt and ruin your season?
Right.
Okay, second question.
Okay.
All right. This was kind of silly, but I have to ask because my daughter asked me.
Okay.
So I'm doing this for her.
Awesome.
Because we were talking about this yesterday. Why is there traffic?
Oh, God.
It's so funny. My kids ask that all the time, right?
So most of the time that there is traffic is because people don't know how to understand the basic rules of the road. So the zipper thing. If the line, if you, and I know that there's people that are you're cutting, but if it allows you to go all the way to the end before the cones, that's where you zipper.
Right.
You don't start back here and then leave all that spot open. You're supposed to go all the way to the cones and then start zippering, and one after another. And if you do it the right way, nobody actually stops. Everyone keeps going. If everyone just does it the right way, lets people in, you go to the end of the cones. That's one of the biggest reasons. And then, of course, with accidents, it's the rubbernecking. But the zipper, and that's for merging onto the highways and stuff too. That is, if you do it the right way, for all of us, you let someone in, and if you just go all the way to the end, there would be no traffic.
And that's so smart. And the thing is, especially being a New Yorker and in Jersey, you get where the people don't let you in sometimes, and you're like, hello. If you just let me in, it would be
you're not going to get there that much faster. There's 2 cars in front of me now. Woohoo! You're going to get there maybe
rude.
13 seconds faster. Yeah, no.
So rude.
It's meant to zipper for a reason, and that's that would actually stop all the
I
traffic
love
if we
that.
just.
I can't wait to tell
I
my
had to
kids
ask.
that.
I had to ask.
Yeah.
I had the traffic reporter here. I had to ask.
Well,
it.
and you know, Fran, I'm so glad that you actually asked me that because nobody asked me about my traffic reporter history. So they're like, oh, you're a sports reporter. That's so cool. But I was like, yeah, I mean, like, it was really awesome going to the games and like I got to go in the locker room and everything and get the post game interviews. But like everyone's kind of like, oh, traffic.
Right.
Well, there's two things. So there's two things in journalism, and it doesn't matter who you are, okay? But you stop everything you're doing and you listen. Traffic and the weather.
Traffic and the weather.
That's it.
Oh, I love that. Right.
And when you work in the newsroom, because I interned in the newsroom, the two coolest people are the weather person and the traffic reporter.
person.
Yeah.
Everyone else is like pulling their hair out, dousing themselves in gasoline, running around with matches, like, camera goes off, they're yelling at people,
Yeah. Right.
and the camera goes on and they're like, hi, and welcome back, right?
Well, I
It's
mean,
like,
like,
oh my
it's the one-
God, you
this
were
is-
like screaming at me half a second
second
ago.
ago.
And the weatherman's like, hey, here's what I run these models, and then like this computer just like creates these slides, and I get up there and brief them, and I go back and I watch the sports guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Oh my God,
that's
that's
it.
so cool.
Well,
right.
I mean, like you think about it, it's the one thing that is untangible. Like it's not
Right.
open to interpretation.
Right.
This is what it is, and
right.
as opposed to like the news and like sports, like I don't really care about golf, so I'm not even gonna tune in. I'm just gonna he's gonna talk about golf the whole time. I'm just gonna turn it off. Everyone wants to see the weather. Everyone wants to
right.
see like what's going on with traffic. So
Yeah.
you're right.
So I have one question. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, I have one question, and it's we all have our passions, and we love certain things. You said you love sports, but is there one sport that like is a little bit more like has a little bit more of a sensitive like bone, like it hits your bone, and you're like, oh my God, that is like my love child, that sport.
Well, NFL and hockey. I mean, hockey. We watch literally every single hockey game.
Right.
Do you really?
Yeah. So the long story short, we in Denver. There's been a huge TV battle between the owner of the Colorado Avalanche and all the TV stations like Comcast and Dish and DirecTV, and so we weren't able to watch them for 2 years. So we had to. So we actually stream through the UK through our computer. I mean, like it's
Oh
just
my
been,
God.
I know it's,
I
but we
didn't
watch
know
every
that.
single
I
game.
didn't know
Yeah,
that either.
yeah. It's been. I'm like we're watching one of the best teams in hockey, and we
Right.
can't. The people in Colorado can't even watch them. But yeah. So I mean, we never miss a hockey game, and then our Sundays are devoted to Red Zone. So we tune in first thing. Well, we would start with and fantasy football now. On ESPN2 with Matthew Berry and Field Yates, and then we move right on into Red Zone straight until Sunday Night Football, and that's our entire Sundays are full of football, and I love it. So I mean, those are my two sports. The one sport that I really can't get into, no matter how hard I tried, would be racing. So like NASCAR or Formula One. Like,
See, I have come around to it.
yeah, see, like NASCAR, I'm like, I just don't get it. Like, I just can't. I don't.
It's the strategy. It's the strategy.
It's like
No,
the
they're
zipper,
all have
right?
they're all have the, that, and that's the thing. You're right. It is all
It's
strategy.
It's the car setup.
Yeah, and I mean, like,
Interesting.
it's.
We're going to do a NASCAR episode later this year.
I don't know
We're
if I
trying to line
could get
it up.
into watching it's like 3 hours of just like
Yeah, it's a
watching
long
a car go around in a circle.
Right.
F1's exciting though.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah. I mean,
And Netflix, the Netflix special Drive to Survive has like totally changed the game for F1 because it brought it like mainstream globally. And now they just raced in Miami. They have the Austin race in
they
November.
have this Pikes Peak International race where they.
Oh, that's fun.
Where like,
Yeah.
But they go up Pikes Peak and like it's a real narrow road. You
in
know,
everything.
Yeah.
All different kind of cars.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, Pikes Peak race is,
Yeah,
is
see, I'm
really
not
cool.
car
All
racing
different
yet.
kinds of cars do it.
The only reason I know about that though is because my husband has some video game, and I'm like, and he's like, this is the Pikes Peak one, and I was like, that's cool.
You got to go to
funny.
it. You should go to it. It's close to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Katie, thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming and spending some time with us. Truly an honor to meet you. Share your story, share your perspective. I appreciate you talking about sports, talking about traffic. I love your journey.
Thank you.
And the multiple podcasts, your perspective on podcasting. We've learned so much from you, not only from this conversation, but just watching the work that you've done over the time since we've been in this space. And an honor to meet you.
Awesome.
And you can hear how excited, like certain things that you talked about, and that's one of the things that I love about podcasting and doing what we do, is you could hear like the excitement and certain things that you talked about. So it's been just wonderful hearing your story.
The power of voice. So,
and storytelling, the power of story, right? Telling your story.
For real. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad that we were able to connect and that you asked me to join you guys today.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. American Jedburghs went out to form the foundation of the United States Special Forces and the Special Activities Director to the Central Intelligence Agency. Thanks for listening to the Jedburgh Podcast. I'm your creator and host, Fran Racioppi. Join us next week for a new episode on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube for full episodes, highlights, and other behind-the-scenes content. If you like what you heard, give us a like and leave a review. Follow me, Fran Racioppi, Talent War Group, and our sponsor Jersey Mike Subs on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Send your comments and inquiries to media@talentwargroup.com. As former members of Special Operations Forces, the Jedburgh Podcast and Talent War Group contribute a percentage of all profits to the Special Operations Warrior Foundation, supporting the families of our fallen warriors. Thanks for joining us on this episode. How you prepare today determines success tomorrow.